So we're in full Iran war propaganda mode in the media. I've been trying to avoid that, addressing that direct topic. I've been kind of, trying to take things at face value the last week or so, and just sort of rebut claims. And yesterday was the closest I came with all of this, my head exploding about so-called Iranian-backed groups, which is code for anyone in the Middle East who is not Al-Qaeda. Anyone who's not Al-Qaeda is an Iran-backed militia, as far as the United States is concerned. And so it is very clear that the neocons and, really the entire U.S. establishment has united behind the idea of trying to leverage the conflict between Israel and Hamas, which has nothing to do directly with the United States. I mean, it has, to the extent that it has anything to do with the United States, it's only because the U.S. funds Israel so heavily. But beyond that, it has nothing to do with us. They have now leveraged that into, this is why we have to go to war with Iran. And they make these giant leaps in logic, like I went over yesterday, and I won't belabor that point. I think I made myself clear then. And so I kind of want to address the meta now, rather than, the micro of the claims. The meta narrative here is that war with Iran is a good thing. It would be good and easy to win, which is not true. It's not winnable. It would be terrible. And it is completely unnecessary. It benefits no one except for the contractors whose pockets feel a little bit lighter after the end of the Afghanistan war, and who do not feel their appetites for taxpayer dollars satiated by the war in Ukraine. So they want the United States directly involved in another war. They want U.S. troops invading some country and blowing it to bits, and then trying to rebuild it, and then blowing it to bits again. They got 20 years out of, between Iraq and Afghanistan. Iraq completely was overlapped on either side by Afghanistan. But that's over now. People are tired of it. So we need to invade Afghanistan and Iraq's next door neighbor, Iran. Because after all, just holding a knife to Iran's throat for 20 years by being in the countries on either side of them, and having a massive U.S. military presence, on their border, that wasn't enough. Now we need to just directly invade Iran, which is an impossible task. I don't think that the Persian Empire has been conquered since, what was it, like the 600s, when the Muslims first conquered Persia. And there's kind of a reason for that. They have pretty good natural borders. They are on a plateau, meaning that you would have to climb uphill, up mountains, in order to invade Iran. It is not a flat sandbox like Iraq that has artificial borders. Iraq has no natural borders, really. They just have the Sykes-Picot line, which, as ISIS demonstrated in a propaganda video a long time ago, it's just a line in the sand, literally. That's all the Iraq border is. But Iran is a real country. And so it's much harder to take them on. And they're much, much bigger. And they have a much bigger military. They're much more advanced. You go to Iran, it's a real country. Yes, they're heavily sanctioned and they have a lot of resource constraints. But it's an ancient society that has been getting along in one way or another for thousands of years. And so I'm not saying that Iran is stronger than the United States, but they don't have to defeat the United States. They just have to not lose. That's why when you're the invader, the burden is on you. The guys you're invading, all they have to do is stay alive. But you have to kill every last one of them. You have to make them submit. And that's not going to be possible. The U.S. could not conquer Afghanistan, which had no central government, really ever. I mean, the Taliban wasn't really a central government. The Taliban is, just as influential now as they were before. It's just, the Taliban had popular support with 40-something% of the population. And they never lost that. They have it now. And so, winning a war with Iran would end in, or is not possible. It would end in disaster. It would be humiliation for the United States. The U.S. couldn't win in Vietnam. The U.S. couldn't win in Iraq. The U.S. couldn't win in Afghanistan. In Iraq, actually, what they did was they took an anti-Iran government, because we're told, oh, Iran is our big enemy. Even back then, they were saying, well, Iran's the real big enemy, but we're going to take on Iraq. Well, they took Iraq, and they overthrew an anti-Iran government led by Saddam Hussein and replaced it with an overtly pro-Iran government that is like borderline Iran's 51st state. Iraq these days is not as pro-Iran as Hezbollah, but they're pretty darn close. And wait, did I say Iraq? I meant to say Iraq is not as pro-Iran as Hezbollah, but anyway. So the U.S. is going to need a lot of troops to invade this country. They're going to have to spread out over a massive distance. They're going to have to conquer a lot of territory. It's going to take a lot of troops to maintain those gains. And so if they want to start at the draft, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. It is not going to happen. I'm not going to die in a war with Iran. And my government knows that, which is why this would not be a big ground invasion. If they went to war with Iran, they would just level the place like Israel's doing now with Gaza. They would just blow up every single city in Iran. Blockade it, starve them out, and then, just waltz in. Which, by the way, that's what the United States did in Iraq. They didn't fight a conventional war in Iraq. They destroyed the country and then walked in after it had already been completely destroyed. And they thought they would be welcomed as liberators. And so maybe since, Iran would be such a big ask, maybe they'll settle on just destroying Syria again for the second time in less than, they started in 2011, and that war is technically still not over. Maybe they'll just run in there and say, we're going to get rid of Assad once and for all. For Israel, they'll say. And then you would just have a situation on your hands that is as bad as Iraq. So there are no good options here other than just keeping our hands out of it, which the Biden administration seems determined not to do. You even have Biden's spokesman, going on TV and being asked about war with Iran, and then being like, no comment, So it's just all so stupid. There's no reason for any of this. But that's why they're trying to get people riled up. They're trying to get people scared so that they will accept this. And it shouldn't work. There's no excuse for it. People shouldn't fall for it again, but I see it happening. Ben Shapiro was telling them we have to go to war with Iran to prevent World War III. Because if not, if we don't do Israel's bidding, well, then Israel's just going to start a global nuclear war. Just 'cause. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.